Welcome back to my channel. If you get scared even a little bit, then this video might not be for you. Watch at your own risk, because today's story is dark, mysterious, and truly terrifying. Hello friends, how are you all? I hope you all doing great, and life is treating you well. I'm guessing you've already listened to my last horror story, but if you haven't, don't worry. I'll leave the link right below the description box. Today's story is going to be incredibly terrifying. If you have AirPods, headphone, or earphones, put them on right now. Go into a separate room, turn off the light, set your phone aside, and just lose yourself in the story through your headphones. Today's story is called The Road That Didn't Exist. The rain began just after midnight, turning the mountain highway into a slick black ribbon that seemed to stretch endlessly into the dark. I had been driving for nearly 7 hours, fueled by cheap gas station coffee and the quiet hum of the radio. My destination was a small town 3 hours north, a place my GPS couldn't quite pinpoint, forcing me to rely on a faded paper map I'd found in the glove box. The highway had grown increasingly quiet over the last hour, until the red taillights of the few cars ahead vanished entirely, leaving me alone with the rhythmic sweep of my windshield wipers. That was when the radio started to crackle. Standard static at first, but then it settled into a low, rhythmic pulsing, almost like a heavy breath scraping against a microphone. I reached out to change the station, but the dial just spun freely. Suddenly, the GPS screen flickered back to life, its blue glow harsh against the dark interior of the car. The mechanized voice spoke, but the words were garbled. In 500 feet, pull over. I frowned and slowed down, looking out into the dense wall of fog that had settled over the trees. There was no exit. No turn off, just a decaying wooden sign sticking out of the mud, its text scraped off by time. Against my better judgment, I veered onto the dirt trail beyond the sign. The asphalt gave way to loose gravel, and the branches of the surrounding pines leaned low, scratching against the roof of the car like frantic fingers. My headlights cut through the fog, illuminating a narrow path that seemed to curve endlessly downward. After 10 minutes of descending, the road suddenly flattened out, opening up to a long, straight stretch bounded by rusted metal guardrails. Standing right in the middle of the road, lit by my high beams, was a tall, impossibly thin figure wearing a dark coat. I slammed on the brakes, the tires skidding on the wet gravel, stopping less than 20 feet away. My heart hammered against my ribs as I waited for the person to turn around or move. They stood completely still, facing away from me, their shoulders unnaturally hunched. I sounded the horn. The sharp noise echoed off the trees, but the figure didn't flinch. Slowly, I put the car in reverse, intending to back out and find the main highway. But when I looked in my rearview mirror, the road behind me was gone. Where the dirt trail had been, there was only a wall of solid, ancient trees pressing tightly together. Panic set in fast. I looked back through the windshield, and my chest tightened. The figure was no longer 20 feet away. It was standing directly in front of my hood. Its face was pressed against the glass, pale, featureless, and stretched, with hollow black sockets where its eyes should have been. The creature didn't smash the window. It simply tapped a long, bone-white finger against the glass, right in front of my eyes. The sound echoed inside the cabin, perfectly matching the pulsing static still coming from the radio speakers. I threw the transmission into drive, swerving wildly around the creature, and floored the accelerator. The car surged forward into the pitch-black fog. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as I drove at breakneck speeds, unable to see more than 10 feet ahead. Every time I thought I had escaped, my headlights would catch the same decayed wooden sign, the same rusted guardrails, and the same thin figure standing in the middle of the lane, waiting. The road was a loop, a trap pulling me deeper into a place that didn't exist on any map. The fuel needle was hovering, dangerously close to empty, when the car finally sputtered and died, coasting to a stop in the absolute silence of the woods. The engine went cold, the headlights flickered out, and the cabin was plunged into total darkness. As I sat there in the freezing air, listening to my own ragged breathing, a soft, deliberate knock echoed against the rear passenger door. Then the radio clicked back on, and the voice came through clear, quiet, and right next to my ear. "Thank you for the ride." For several seconds, I couldn't move. The words still echoed inside my head. "Thank you for the ride." I slowly reached for the radio, but the moment my fingers touched it, the static disappeared. Silence returned. Then, somewhere outside the car, I heard footsteps moving through the wet leaves. I didn't wait to find out who or what was walking around me. I turned the key. To my surprise, the engine started. The headlights flickered back on, revealing the empty road ahead. There was no figure, no wooden sign, no rusted guardrails, just a narrow dirt road disappearing into the fog. I pressed the accelerator and drove. This time, the road didn't loop. After what felt like 20 minutes, the trees suddenly became thinner and the fog began to disappear. Then I saw something I never thought I would see again: the main highway. I pulled onto the asphalt and stopped for a moment, trying to understand what had happened. The rain had stopped. The sky was beginning to turn gray. It was almost sunrise. I looked at the dashboard. The clock showed 5:47 a.m. I had no idea how several hours had passed. I checked the fuel gauge. It was almost empty, but somehow the car had carried me all the way back to the highway. I drove without stopping until I reached the nearest gas station. The attendant looked at me strangely as I stepped out of the car. He asked if I was okay. I told him I had gotten lost on a mountain road. He stared at me for a moment and then asked where I had been. I showed him the faded paper map. His expression changed immediately. He pointed at a small section of the map. "Don't go there," he said quietly. I looked at the area he was pointing toward. There was nothing marked there. No road, no town. He told me that an old mountain road had existed in that area many years ago, but it had been closed after several unexplained accidents. According to him, the road had disappeared from modern maps decades ago. I didn't tell him what I had seen. I simply got back into my car and continued driving. 3 hours later, I finally reached home. I parked the car in the driveway and sat behind the wheel for several minutes, staring at my front door. Everything looked normal. The house, the street, the morning sunlight. For the first time that night, I felt safe. I walked inside, locked the door behind me, and went straight to bed. I thought the nightmare was finally over. But that evening, while unpacking my things, I found something lying on the passenger seat of my car. A small, faded wooden sign. The same sign I had seen beside the dirt road. I picked it up and turned it over. There were only 4 words carved into the back. "Next time, don't leave." I dropped the sign immediately. And from that night on, I never drove that mountain highway again. And that is where today's story ends, my friends. I really hope you all survived this nightmare. If this story scared you and you liked it, please go ahead and hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'll see you in the next horror video. Until then, goodbye.